Happy October, everybody. Today we're going to be doing something a little different. One of my favorite things to do at this time of the year is to watch horror movies and also to play games along that genre. I wanted to start off first with some of the older games and then kind of move our way forward throughout the month. And we're going to start off with our Atari 2600 games. These are all emulated just for video capture. And quality-wise and sound-wise, even though the sound on most of these is quite terrible. But if you hadn't noticed, our first game is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. A really silly little game where you are Leatherface and you're going around. And I just love how much you get hung up on everything. Back and forth, you get stuck. But after a little while, you get better at dodging it. One thing I found really annoying is once you get into, like, right next to the girl, she blinks back and forth, so you kind of gotta go back and forth then switch. But pretty frustrating. This is kind of a game that you can play for a few minutes and then you want to move on, which is exactly what we're gonna do next. The next game we're gonna try out is called Nightmare. I mean, when you're playing these Atari games, you can't really expect too much other than a pretty good challenge and some pretty silly graphics. So with Nightmare here, you're climbing a pole, you're dodging what I assume are bats and snakes to get to your helicopter, and then you advance to the next level. You get a jaunty little tune that doesn't really fit in for this type of game, and you find that the next level is quite a bit different. You get like a hammer or something, and little space aliens, and more poles to climb, and more dumb snakes. I didn't get too far in this. I assume you whack the little aliens down with your hammer. But you have that little life meter that's always ticking down and you just keep dying. There's just no time, and then you restart over and you go back and forth. Not too much to say here. Well, let's try something else. Moving on to one of the, well, I'd say my favorite game I played this evening was Killer Satellites. So it's a simple little shooter where you're going back and forth shooting down these little alien satellites. I like to pretend that these are the satellites that crash land into Earth and cause the zombie apocalypse. So you got those kind of funky little satellites dropping down, and then you have real bombs. I really liked going back and forth. Probably like the first 5 levels are super easy. Helps you get the hang of how to navigate and shoot down your enemies. You can get like super fast where you're like, oh no, I'm going too fast. And your top gauge is like the amount of time or fuel. And then you have your little bar that shows you which direction the little satellite is. The graphics are pretty funky. The neat thing about Killer Satellites was it was an add-on like peripheral thing that you needed. It was like a supercharger that hooks up to a cassette and stuff. A neat little game. I'm not sure why you needed that added on. It seems like it's a pretty basic, simple game. But it's pretty cool. Not scary, but definitely a fun one, and I like the little spinny satellites and aliens. And it's really neat when you fail. Everything goes haywire. You go pew and like what you see in most of the Atari games when you die. It's a lot of fun. And I think with the kill screens, we're gonna move on to one that has one of my favorite graphics. So let's see what that one is. Next up is Frankenstein's Monster. This is a pretty cool one. A lot of people should be fairly familiar with it. It was a pretty popular and widely known game. You see it played quite a bit. But you're a guy wearing your little baseball cap trying to build up a barrier around Frankenstein. It's pretty cool. It took a little bit for me to get used to the controls. You kind of have to build a little momentum as you run, otherwise you just jump straight up in the air. And you gotta watch out for those spiders because they don't kill you, but they kind of stun you in place, so you can accidentally fall to your death and run out of time. The blue ghost, you can't jump over that top part, and that's really annoying. But the second you get your brick back up to the top, you kind of gotta dodge all these evil bats or seagulls or something, and then you start off with a new layout with new obstacle courses. You still have the spiders and the spooky blue ghosts and the spiders, but the jumping platforms change a little bit, and they get harder as you go. And you run into the stupid spiders as you jump, and then you sink to your death. But you keep going, and it's pretty neat. The unfortunate thing about these Atari games is they're pretty pricey. There are emulation, but I noticed that people are making band carts where they use either different art or whatever. They clearly mark them that they're not original. But if you ever go into any used game store, you can get like a big old stack of Atari games for a couple bucks. But most of the labels are all gross and the contacts need to be clean. So it is an option if you want a really well, like a new fresh cart. You can get a fan-made carts out there. And there's something kind of neat because they have like little fan-made books and everything to go with it. Ah, gonna get that spider. But as I said, this one has the best death screen. So let's jump right into that and check that one out. Alright, so our final game today is Halloween. This game took me a little bit getting used to getting the little kids to follow me to safety and to avoid Michael. Right off the bat I get my head chopped off. Very violent. Michael, he seems to teleport every which way. He pops out of nowhere. But once you get your kids to safety, you get your points, you move on. It seems like there's an infinite number of kids. The little pumpkins represent your life. And you just keep going until you run out. You are able to fight Michael a little bit with a crowbar, and you kind of chase him off for a little bit. But he's really after just stabbing you and stabbing those little kids, which he strangely does in this game. I wasn't really expecting that until I was sitting there playing it going, yep, he just walked over and started stabbing that little kid. Pretty violent. I guess it's a little more violent than our first game, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So with that said, that is our last game of the evening. In all, there's a lot of other games that I was trying out and playing and captured some video of, but maybe tomorrow I'll post those games as well. I just didn't want to do too much at once. But at the end of the day, these are fun games, but not exactly fully in the Halloween spirit. I guess if you're taking it pretty lightheartedly and you want some pretty silly low-end graphic games from back in the day, definitely worth taking a look. I'm not sure if any of these games show up on the little Atari plug-and-play boxes. I doubt Halloween would show up on it, but you never know. But it's definitely something to look out for, or at least try out on your PC. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you really did enjoy it, please consider liking and subscribing. And we're going to continue on this October with more spooky games. And I think we're going to do one more with the Atari 2600 before we move on to check out some spooky arcade games. There's a whole bunch to spend some time and check out and have a little discussion with. So, we'll see you guys next time.